Okay.
Should I say hi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Shelley Desisto. I teach 7th grade ELA at Bethel Middle School in Bethel, Connecticut. And today my students conducted a close read of The Noble Experiment, which is an excerpt from Jackie Robinson's autobiography. And the excerpt really provides an excellent model of perseverance, both in the figure of Branch Rickey and the figure of Jackie Robinson. The students' unit surrounds the concept of perseverance, and they are studying different figures that demonstrate the traits of perseverance. So today we were looking at the content of that text in what examples of perseverance we could find, but also working with literary skills like finding the central idea, pulling specific evidence to support our ideas, and composing a claim with specific evidence.
All right, first question. We want to understand the decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. How does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before the lesson and what will come after it?
Our current unit of study surrounds the concept of perseverance, and the students are exploring and discovering different figures that demonstrate perseverance in different ways. So today they looked specifically at Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson, who together helped end segregation in Major League Baseball in the United States. Prior to today's lesson, the students were working with finding central ideas in a text and also providing objective summaries of the text. In addition, they worked to define the concept of perseverance, and they have been looking at several other figures like Nelson Mandela, who also demonstrated perseverance in different ways.
Continuing on that question.
Should I do any more of the skills that they needed? Like,
we're going to go through everything, so I would just keep it direct to the questions. So continuing on to that, discuss the sequence of the lessons that surround this one lesson.
That seems similar.
It is similar.
Okay. Over the past few weeks, the students have been working to define the concept of perseverance and to find examples of perseverance in different figures from history and present day. I forget the question. The sequence of lessons?
Discuss the sequence of lessons that surround this one lesson.
Okay. Let me do that one again.
Okay.
Sequence of lessons. And they want before today and after today?
Do you want me to tell you the whole question again?
Yeah.
Just so you can relate it?
Sorry.
That's okay. How does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before this lesson and what will come after it? Discuss the sequence of lessons that surround this one lesson.
Okay. Prior to today's lesson, the students have defined the concept of perseverance, and they've begun to research and study different figures that represent different traits of perseverance, including figures like Nelson Mandela, and then today, Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey. After today's lesson, the students will continue to conduct close reads of different historical and present-day figures that demonstrate perseverance. Eventually, the goal is to determine the figure that best represents the concept of perseverance, and they'll have a multimedia presentation as the culminating project at the end of the unit.
Is this text used in this lesson part of a sequence of text designed to build skills and knowledge? If so, give an example of text that form this sequence.
Okay. This text we use today, The Noble Experiment, is a part of a sequence of texts. Most of our unit is based in text. So we started with Nelson Mandela's An Excerpt from a Long Walk to Freedom. We've moved on to Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson's The Noble Experiment, and they'll continue to read both biographical and informational texts that surround this concept of perseverance. Pause.
Good afternoon.
I can just pick up right where I left.
We are now rolling. And is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of text Is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of text designed to build skills and knowledge? If so, please give the example of other texts that form the sequence.
Because the units focus on this overarching theme of perseverance, every text that the students analyze and explore relates to perseverance in some way. So they started with an excerpt from Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, and today they looked at The Noble Experiment, which really details the interactions between Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson and how that led to the end of segregation in baseball. And from today, the students will continue to explore different figures of perseverance through rigorous grade level text, whether it's excerpts from the Miracle Worker or biographical or informational text on other figures.
Talk about the standards targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of the standard? You want me to stop for a minute?
Yeah, I just want to...
All right, you are on.
The Common Core standards ask students to dig deep into text and to respond to text-dependent questions and to cite evidence from the text to support their ideas. And that's exactly what my students were doing today. We started with central ideas and developing an objective summary of the Noble Experiment. And then I asked students to really take a closer look at sections of the text and respond to specific text-dependent questions to have a deeper understanding of this noble experiment and what Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson actually did, not only for baseball, but for the civil rights movement. In writing, the CCSS asks students to draw evidence to support their ideas and to also support a claim with specific text evidence. And my students also addressed those standards. They were asked to identify either Branch Rickey or Jackie Robinson as the better representation of perseverance, and then to support that claim with evidence from the text. In addition, speaking and listening, my students collaborated today in group discussions to respond to text-dependent questions, and as a class, we had discussions on Branch Rickey, Jackie Robinson, how they demonstrated perseverance, and what kind of specific evidence would support a claim or a text-dependent question.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplifies and why? Okay, so again, which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplifies?
Although I believe the lesson has indicators from all three core actions, I believe core action 2, text-dependent questions and text-dependent activities, this lesson really did focus in on the text. It asked students to dig into the text to find specific, relevant, direct evidence from the text to support their ideas and to support a claim. Whatever the students came up with for an idea, they needed to support it with evidence from the text. And I believe that that's at the core of core action 2, is having an idea and supporting it with evidence from the text.
We're interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your instruction. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
This lesson addresses the Common Core shifts because the shifts require that students work with vocabulary-rich, informational nonfiction texts. And that's exactly what our students did today. They dug into a rich informational nonfiction text that explained the civil rights movement. I'm going to start that one over.
Sounds good.
Okay, building knowledge through content-rich. That's what I was trying to, content-rich, not vocabulary-rich. Building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. Dr. Jordan would be so mad if I didn't know these shifts. Don't tell her. Building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. Reading, writing, speaking, grounded in evidence. Grounded in evidence. Wish I had flashcards. Okay, I'll try again.
So let me read it one more time. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
The shifts in the CCSS ask students to build knowledge, build content, and build knowledge through content-rich informational and nonfiction texts. And that's exactly what my students did today. And the CCSS shifts also ask students to ground their writing, their reading, and their speaking in evidence. And both activities, the text-dependent questioning and composing a claim, ask students to ground their ideas in evidence. This text was also particularly rigorous, and I think that the academic language and vocabulary was difficult at times for my students, and it asked them to use context clues and to learn new vocabulary in order to gain a deeper understanding of the text. I didn't think that wasn't great, but that's all right.
It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so how did you teach the content of this lesson or this text prior to the CCSS? What's the same and what's the difference?
Okay. Prior to implementation of the CCSS, I actually have I've never taught this text outside of the Common Core standards. if I could speculate, a few years ago, I probably would have read the same text, but I would have approached it in a very different way, and I may have asked more connection-based questions, questions about the students' experiences, and some of the same ideas might have been brought about, but they wouldn't have been grounded in evidence. And I think that asking the students to find specific text evidence to support ideas is a huge change, and that is one of the shifts of the Common Core. I think before, my students might have walked away with an understanding of Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey, but I think given the text-based questioning, given the text-specific activities, I think they have a deeper understanding of Jackie Robinson, Branch Rickey, and their impact on the civil rights movement.
Student engagement is crucial to the work of the CCSS. We want to understand how you ensured that all students had the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. How did you support all students in working with grade level text? For example, how did you provide scaffolding for students below grade level so they can read grade level text?
Prior to today's lesson, during the first read of the Noble Experiment, students were able to break the text up into segments that they felt fit their own reading needs. So at each segment of text, they would identify the central ideas and check for their own comprehension and understanding of the text. The Noble Experiment is a grade level text, but I do believe that it was accessible for all students in the classroom because they have so many resources at their disposal. Reading the text on a computer and having the defining tool and having the research tool, they can find unfamiliar words, they can I lost my train of thought.
They can find unfamiliar words.
So using the tools from the computer, they can identify unfamiliar words, they can find definitions, and they can work through a text at their own pace. I think that being able to break a text up to check for your own comprehension does make a text accessible to everyone in a classroom. What was the rest of the question? How did I scaffold? Okay.
Right.
Using the technology in the room was one way to make this text accessible for all students. But using gradual release of responsibility, it helps model for the students what you're looking for, what the expectation is, so that when they continue in their group or independent work, they have that expectation in mind. Today, in today's lesson, all the students had a model of specific direct evidence that was pulled to respond to a text-dependent question, and they also had an example of an analysis or explanation. When they began to compose claims and to support that claim with reasons and evidence, I also modeled that together as a class so that they could have an example of what that would look like before they independently completed their own claim.
How did you, this is still the same question, how
Okay.
did you create opportunities for students who were advanced to engage more deeply with the grade level or above grade level text?
How did I create opportunities for students that were advanced? Okay. I think that there were opportunities for advanced students and students that are above grade level, because although this is a grade level text, the discussion and the activity that followed it really could be taken to a new level. And I think that the advanced students, or students that are above grade level, really took the time to analyze specific sections of the text, to have conversations with their classmates, and in their own independent work, that advanced understanding of the text was noticeable. I don't know.
Should I pause?
You can cut Marjorie.
But we'll go for it.
Okay.
Because I don't see where she is. Okay. How do you know the students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions and tasks with precision?
Okay. Are we? Hey, Marjorie?
Okay. So, how do you know that students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions and tasks with precision?
I used both formal and informal observation and assessment today to ensure that the students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions. Using gradual release, I started with a model to provide an example of direct evidence and analysis or explanation in response to a text-dependent question. I then allowed students time in a group to talk about a text-dependent question, to respond to it, and then we shared out as a whole class. Being able to track the students' progress through the Google Drive to see the evidence that they're adding, the responses that they're adding, and hearing their conversations were all elements of assessment that I used today, both formal and informal.
Did students acquire the literary skills addressed in this lesson? And what did you do for students who did not acquire the literary skills addressed in the lesson?
Nothing. Okay. Based on evidence of casual observation of conversations and the students, the group text-dependent question chart, the students were asked today to find specific relevant text evidence to support a response to a text-dependent question. Based on the completion of the organizers and composing a claim and argument organizer, I'm going to start this one again. Okay, that was rambling. All right, how do you know that students... what literary skills do the students acquire the literary skills addressed in the lesson? What do you do for the students who do not? Okay, let me just start with that. The students did acquire the literary skills that were addressed in today's lesson. Today's lesson really addressed citing specific textual evidence to support a response to a text-dependent question and specific relevant evidence to support a claim. Based on the students' group conversations and their individual work, it was clear that the students were able to practice that literary skill. Continuing from today, based on the students' work, if I felt that they weren't selecting the best evidence or weren't able to dig into a text and find evidence the way that I wanted them to, small grouping and extra practice would ensure that they would catch up and develop that skill as well. Catch up was not a good way to put it, but
It's okay.
That's
This is all edited. They just pick what they want.
perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so which behaviors from core action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson, and what actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
What indicators of core action 3?
Which behaviors from core
Oh,
action
sorry,
3
okay.
did the students best exemplify, and what actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
Student behaviors that were evident from core action 3 today were the students' consistent use of evidence to support their ideas and their claims. I'm going to do that one again. All right. Habitually provide textual evidence and demonstrate independence when completing literary tasks. Okay. From today's lesson, behaviors that were evident from core action 3, I do believe that the students habitually used text evidence to support their ideas. They also were able to build on each other's ideas through collaborative discussions surrounding the text. I did hear students build on each other's ideas and to provide additional evidence and support to back up those ideas. Using the gradual release model also allowed for that collaborative discussion and then for independent assessment of the students' literary skills. At the end of the lesson, students needed to, by themselves, cite evidence and support their ideas and ground their ideas in evidence.
Great, 2 more questions.
Okay.
Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrated in this lesson and what you would improve upon. Reflecting on the lesson, what worked well and what might you do differently?
Okay. Reflecting on today's lesson, I do think that the gradual release model is a great way to demonstrate specific literary skills for the students, to model the expectation of specific evidence and analysis of a text-dependent question. But in addition, the gradual release model allows for students to learn from example and then to practice that skill. If I were to change anything from this lesson, I'm so sorry, Shannon.
That's okay.
What worked well and what might you do differently? Okay. Reflecting on today's lesson, I thought that the use of the gradual release model was an excellent method to model the use of specific evidence for students and to model an analysis or explanation of a text-dependent question. The gradual release model allows students to use that model to then practice that skill on their own. If I could change something about this lesson, I would have allowed the students to have more time to really dig into some of the questions that they were asked. Many of the students came away with a more surface level explanation and analysis of the question, and I think given more time in their groups that they could have really dug deeper and come up with a deeper understanding of this text.
Last question.
Okay.
Were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
Should I talk about how they were quiet?
Yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't necessarily call it a surprising reaction, but I do think that my students were more hesitant to respond today, and I do think that they were a bit camera shy being filmed. They have been using the CCSS all year. We've implemented them into all content areas in the school. They've been pushed to use text evidence, and they've been pushed to create claims, and today was really just a practice of those literary skills with a grade level text. I do believe that they walked away with from the lesson with an understanding of Branch Rickey and Jackie Robinson, but a surprising behavior would be their hesitancy or their reluctancy to respond and really take risks and ask questions or provide answers that may not have been correct in their minds, which I think is probably usual when they're filmed.
Are they a pretty verbal class?
They are a fantastic class, and they're very chatty, but in a great way. I think a few years ago we wouldn't have wanted a chatty class, and now a chatty class is actually a really great thing because they're so open to responding to each other and debating with each other, and they have absolutely no hesitation in saying, you know, I agree with you or I don't agree with you, and they normally are so willing to respond and to toss out ideas, and they sometimes don't even raise their hands to toss out ideas, which is okay when we're asking for collaborative discussion and we're asking for them to use each other and to build on each other's ideas. You know, how structured are we when we're sharing ideas? We don't raise hands to share ideas in the teacher's room, or we don't raise our hands to share ideas in PLC. We just interact.
Jeremy Foss, if you're in the building, please come to the main office. Jeremy Foss.
Do you want me to redo that one? Okay.
That's good.